So I'm going to spend the next little while talking about what it's like going bush around LGBTI health issues. So if you think you're in the wrong room, then maybe just stay, and that's fine. Um, I'd also like to acknowledge that we're meeting on the land of the is it Bedjigal people. Acknowledge elders, past, present, emerging, and also any Aboriginal people in the room. And in the areas that I work in, I cover a really vast area of land. I would like to acknowledge that when I am travelling on Aboriginal land. Um, so this is sort of the stuff that I'm going to talk about today. I'll probably be having a bit of a yarn for about 40 minutes. Please feel free to interrupt. I'm really fine with that. Um, I'm going to give you some insight into how it was that the regional outreach program was established and why, the kind of work that we do, and it's really cute that my two staff members are like in the front row. Good. Hey. I'm going to talk about the kind of model of work that we do, our practice model in which we engage through, the communities that we work with, who the people are, the projects, and then what the future might look like. And that's me in the dirt. Always taking pictures of me on the dirt, walking away from the camera. So I started working at ACON in the Anti-Violence Project in 2012. And I was a community health promotion officer. I was responsible for developing community responses to homophobic and transphobic and domestic violence. I would engage with clients who had experienced that, police, service providers across the state. And in 2014, I was asked to fill in for the health promotion worker from Regional Outreach who was going away for a few months. And I said, sure. And my area of responsibility was the Murrumbidgee, and I'll show you what that means. I didn't know what the Murrumbidgee was. I thought it was a town. It's not a town. It's a region. And shortly thereafter, a little area called the Far West was added to my area. And then 6 months after that, I was the team leader, and I very recently stepped into a role called Regional Outreach Development Manager, which I wrote that title, and I'm still not sure what it means, but it's very exciting. So I think it's really fairly safe to say that I never imagined that I would be working in the bush. It wasn't on my long-term plan, but I can also very safely say that I can't really imagine doing anything else. I feel very honoured to be able to do the work that I do. So I guess here's a bit of a story about how I position, contextualise and stretch the idea of LGBTI health in country areas, according to the work that I do and my team does at ACON. But I'll tell you a little history lesson first. In case you don't know, and I'm sure you all know, this is the breadth of ACON's services and programs. This is the sort of stuff that we focus on. Most of our work is around HIV and sexual health, primarily for gay men and other men who have sex with men. That's 80% of our work. We also focus on preventative health issues, mental health. We provide counselling and care coordination services and substance support counselling. We do a whole raft of stuff around inclusion programs and community safety. We focus on domestic violence and ageing. We do training bits and pieces, and we do a whole bunch of stuff around policy and research. Up until 2012, ACON had what they called a regional branch based in Wollongong. It was the Illawarra office, which had been operating for about 20 years and had a really, really strong sort of Illawarra Wollongong focus. And because of that, and because of the limited resources that were available, it stayed pretty tightly around Wollongong, which meant that down the southeast, like they're down the south coast, the southwestern areas of New South Wales, the far west were really underserviced. So that office, the decision was made ultimately by the board to close that office, which allowed for the development of this regional outreach model, of which I now manage. So this program was established in 2013, so about a year before I stepped into it. And the work is about essentially providing a community development space in country areas to extend the reach of ACON's programs, services, and campaigns, essentially. We implement ACON's statewide and Australia-wide HIV campaigns and messages in the bush. And in order to do that, we apply a sort of LGBTI health lens across it. And I'll talk more about that in a sec. For those of you who are interested, this is the way the sort of programming is split up. We have a Sydney office where a whole bunch of stuff is developed. We also have some local programs that are delivered out of Sydney. We have a Lismore office, we have a Newcastle office, and then we have a regional outreach program, of which I manage a large area out of Sydney, but there's also work that happens out of our Newcastle office and our Lismore office. So this is New South Wales, for those who don't know. And this is the area that I manage and my team manages. And that's Victoria. So it's quite a large expanse. So we support 5 local health districts. There's a population of about 1.3 million and about 500,000 square kilometres, of which a lot of it is deep outback. Wild emus, goats, kangaroos. I did get chased by a dog once, but I did take a good photo after that, so it sort of balances it out. Our work we kind of like to call it an integrated health promotion model. We are all about peer education and leading a peer response to HIV in the country. We mobilise and engage with communities, particularly around volunteers, community leaders, community groups, etc. We do a whole lot of online engagement, which I'll talk about. We do a whole lot of stuff in town, in the bush, face to face. If you want to correct me at any time, feel free. We also focus some of our work around advocacy, around helping to create supportive environments, developing referral pathways, bringing people together, keeping LGBTI health and HIV on the agenda in the country. We also recognise that people in regional areas are really used to people coming in and wanting to do things to them, particularly from the big city, people wanting to do things to or for, and we prefer to engage with. And it's much more successful than, I'll tell you a funny story about it in a sec maybe. Regional areas are not stupid, they're not backward, they're just really underserviced. So if we rolled into town and started talking about HIV and sex, great, but there are other more important priorities for communities in the country, and we need to respect that and then build our HIV work within that. So this is the view, this is the idea that people talk to me about with people in the country. I love a Simpsons reference. There's almost a bit of an archetypal view of what it means to live in the bush in Australia. They're a little bit slow. Who here is from the bush? I know you're from the bush. Okay, yeah, most of you, cool. I knew that people here would be people who are from the country. Bit slow, bit backward, very conservative. Country towns are these homophobic enclaves that are really good for one thing only, getting the hell out of. Um, my friends, when I talk about what I do, often inquire about how I'm doing, if I'm safe. Are you okay? And how wonderful it is that I'm doing all of this stuff for those people in the country. And they honestly, and I think very genuinely worry about my safety. Honestly, thinking that country towns are like one, maybe one street. And some of them absolutely are. Although I was in a town very recently in the deep outback called Wilcannia that has a population of 750 people and had more than one street, way more than one street. Even had a community radio station and the NBN. So they're doing actually, in some ways, better than here. And also the general view is that there are no gays in the village. Um, and I really get that. I get that. And I don't think for a second suggest that living regionally is a bed of roses. And I'm not here to paint that picture. And I know that our communities in the country face a lot of intersectional issues, particularly around experiencing isolation, family rejection, etc. Loneliness is a thing that comes up a lot. And so a researcher, James Morandini and co, he did some research in 2015, and this is what he found, and I quote: those residing in rural remote localities reported significantly increased concealment of sexuality from friends, more concern regarding disclosure of sexuality, less LGBT community involvement, fewer friendships with other lesbian, gay, and bisexual people, and among men, higher levels of internalized homophobia than those residing in inner metro areas. But it is certainly, we can't apply that as a blanket statement across the entirety of regional New South Wales or Australia. I think it is much more complex than that and way more nuanced as well. For example, this is Manu, and he is a refugee from Kenya, from Nairobi in Kenya, who is just about to finish his medical degree. Put a boy with a rainbow flag in the canola fields and they just go off. But it's not always like this. In 2014, so only a few years ago, Keith Wheeler from the Daily Advertiser in Wagga. Yeah, are you from Wagga? Represent. Cool. You're from Wagga. Who else is from the Riverina? No one else? He wrote an opinion piece condemning marriage equality, but also linking it to linking marriage equality to the homosexual consequence of sex, which was AIDS, according to Keith, in Wheeler's wisdom. Thanks, Keith. However, the community response was so immediate and overwhelming in its incredible damning of this particular piece. For an entire week, the letters to the editor were absolutely full to the brim every day for a week, full of angry residents who said, "You don't speak for us. How dare you?" In fact, they also took to Facebook, giving the Daily Advertiser 1-star reviews and then like pages of narrative about how dare you represent us in our communities. And I was able to, I think because by that time I'd been able to develop a relationship with communities, and that's what we do. We really want to build a relationship with the community. So I acted as a bit of technical support. People calling me because Wheeler's wisdom talked about how AIDS was on the rise and uncontrollable, and AIDS, a whole lot of this, and people called me for some technical assistance. And ACON wrote a private letter to the editor, and I linked them into an appropriate FAO's media guide on reporting about HIV. Anyway, so it turns out that the editor at the time was on paternity leave and blah, blah, blah. I'm so sorry and all of this. But the community response at the time was so strong. It was actually really beautiful. Were you there? Were you in Wagga? 2014? Yeah. Mm. For a balanced view. That's why. Mm. Yes. Mm. Roll him out. They do, they do. Mm. Mm. In fact, there was a person called Ted from Wagga who wrote a letter saying, "Get a grip, Keith." It was, I can't imagine who that was. Anyway. And this has been some of the impact of what I've seen for the current marriage equality survey. To the left, this is Tony Johnson, and she's the former convener, long-term convener of the community group in Albury Wodonga called Hume Phoenix that was established 23 years ago to provide end-of-life care for people dying of AIDS-related illness. And then over the last 20, 15 years, it's moved into a much more social support sort of group. She's recently stepped down from Hume Phoenix because she's a one-woman marriage equality show of Albury Wodonga. And she took to a highway in Wodonga with Father Peter, who's the Hume Archdeacon for the Anglican parish or something. No, the Anglican, anyway, something Anglican. And so they held up signs for an entire afternoon and were very impressed by the huge number of honks that they got. Tony has also taken to the streets of Albury to encourage shopkeepers to put marriage equality signs on their doors and windows and to make a really visible statement. Albury Council and Wodonga Council have both passed, I was going to say passed motions. That doesn't seem like it's the right thing to say, but I think it might be in support of marriage equality. Danny Deepthroat, who is also from Albury, says it all, and she really is fabulous. And this was taken at an event called Border Pride Fair Day, which happened last year. And here are the things going on for folks in the bush that I'm aware of, that I hear. I can't find a boyfriend. I want to get married. I want to, or I need to start medically transitioning, and I can't find a GP. I can't ask my GP about a HIV or STI test because he was there when I was born. And that's awkward. The GP surgery has pictures of Jesus everywhere. I've been referred to the gender clinic, but I can't afford to go. And the wait time's like 2 years. My family's struggling to accept me. I'm one of 8 kids. They're really, really Catholic. Shit. It's funny. There are lots and lots of large families. And it's like the larger family you have, the more statistically likely you are to have a queer kid. And sure enough, there's these big families. There's always one or two. My boss doesn't treat me well now that they know I'm gay or I'm a lesbian, I'm pansexual or I'm trans. And one that I get quite a lot, particularly doing the Grinder outreach work that we do, can I get AIDS from oral sex? In that particular wording. I'm lonely. I have HIV. I'm really super well looked after, but I'm poor or I have a mental illness. I have a disability. Also, I can't find a route. I'm traumatized from my childhood in the bush. I organise community events because I want to be a community leader and no bastard shows up. I've been bullied at school. Actually, nothing is wrong. I'm awesome. I'm fine, and I'll tell you all about it, which is great. My friends, my family, my workplace, my church, my community love me, and that's awesome. They accept me and go team. It sounds like things like this happening in Sydney. It's the same sort of messaging. I'm seeing significantly more visibility out in the streets, people converging around this marriage survey. In the city, people talk about how, it's either not that big a deal or there are way more important things than marriage equality, and I agree. But in country areas, this is the issue that is polarizing families and communities and bringing people out and onto the street. Um, and and seeing images like this and people really showing up for each other in community areas is really, really heartening to see and really inspiring, I find. I've seen a dramatic increase in things like new Facebook community groups that have been established. I think there's now three marriage equality Facebook groups for Wagga. It's like you could probably talk to figure that out. Anyway, doesn't matter. There's a new South Coast Rainbow community group that's just been established to connect all of the disparate communities down the South Coast, which is really beautiful, run by one person, mind you. Um, People in the bush are out and about and are really, really keen to participate, but there's a very specific way in which we need to do that, and that's through, I think, really showing leadership and being real. This is Kirsty. She plays AFL with women's AFL team in Bracken Hill. So I went and watched her play. A few years ago, she was banned from playing women's AFL because she's trans, and now she's been accepted and she's playing, and it was great to be able to celebrate that with her. Now, these girls weren't really meant to be performing, but put a drag queen near a stage, play some music, and it's all on. And these beautiful queens, again, were at the Border Pride Fair Day that I was very, very honoured to be able to bring a whole bunch of community groups and services together to host this day. And there's drag queens in every town across the country. This year we saw a whole lot of people from regional areas travelling to Sydney for Mardi Gras and really celebrating being from the bush. And this crew up here were proud, and they're saying we're proud in, and then they held signs, we're proud in Wagga, we're proud in Gundagai, we're proud in Yass, we're proud in Hay, lots of different areas. And down here is a marriage equality rally that was held in Nowra with 200 people, including community stalls, of which Acon had a presence. Thanks, John. Sean is one of our health promotion volunteers. So he's attended some of our workshops. He lives in Wagga as well. The way that we think about peer education is a little bit more holistic. Any LGBTI person can come. In fact, we've had parents of LGBTI people come along. We run a session around sexual health and HIV because the community leaders and gatekeepers in regional areas are all almost without a doubt older lesbians, and they really need to know about this stuff. They're supporting young gay guys on the ground, and they're interested in really kind of want to get a bit of an update. But we also talk about who LGBTI people are, why it is that we come together as a community, a bit of an idea around identity and community, and then an introduction to ACON's work and services. And then after that, for people who are interested, we stay connected to those people and make sure that they're supported while they're talking to their mates and their families and communities about ACON's work, but also more broadly, stuff around HIV in particular when they're talking to their other gay friends. We were able to really support the implementation of EPIC sites in regional New South Wales. There are now EPIC sites for PrEP access in Albury, in Wagga, in Wollongong and Nowra, also in Orange and Dubbo and in Bathurst. We held community forums, of which actually they were really, really well attended, but a lot of people kind of already knew what was going on. People are connected and converging around Facebook, where a lot of information about PrEP is shared. But we held community forums and a whole lot of people came along. And we also held a forum around what undetectable was all about. And a whole lot of people came and Um, there are absolutely numbers of people living in country areas who are living with HIV. Most people that I'm aware of who are living with HIV in country areas, if they've been diagnosed, are wrapped in the most exquisite cotton wool care from the sexual health nurses in country areas. They are all on treatment, and if they're not, then there's a damn good reason why. And the nurses are like all across it, like you wouldn't believe. And if they don't show up to an appointment, the nurse is like knocking on the door. Hey, you're coming in the car. In the supermarket. Oh, yep. They really connected to communities. Sometimes maybe a little bit too much, but um, yeah. So we integrate a HIV focus into our LGBTI health promotion, and we found that it works really, really well. I get up and I talk a lot. I get up and I show up and I try to be consistent and I try to be sustainable and I advocate and I allow space. Um, I make connections. I try to be real, like I said. I try to be honest and I try to be really respectful and invest in time. You will never see me roll into a country town and then leave either that afternoon or the following morning. I do not believe in this idea of the fly in, fly out situation. I find it so deeply disrespectful. Um, so that's my hot take for LGBTI health. Show up, front up, show leadership, and get it happening because people really want to. People are really, really mobilized and engaged and super excited about things like PrEP. Really excited. Really excited about bringing communities together and doing stuff together. But you have to do it in a very particular way. I came across this Facebook conversation thread because a whole bunch of beautiful boys had decided that they wanted to do a regional road trip from Sydney to check people's voting make sure that people's voting status details were updated. So they jumped in the car from Sydney and they went through all these regional towns and they were going to do 100 Ks for the gays, I think is what they called it. And so this is a local community member that said, when of course the media was all about it, according to this article, they were in Wagga over the weekend. And another community leader said, oh, yeah, I noticed that too, which was surprising because she's very well connected. And then knowing this fellow, nothing shits me more than blow-ins from the city, thinking we have no idea of how to organise ourselves and have no passion about these issues without their input. Same arrogant attitude as this particular group. Maybe they should stay to the east and south coast of King Street and stop pretending to give a fuck about the regions. I was like, thanks for your feedback. And then when I asked, because I asked him if I could quote this here, and he said, yeah, I've got something else to say. Okay, sure. He said, make sure you include the swear words. I was like, yes, don't worry. And he said, although this was done with great intention, we are the ones that live here. We know the people. We know who to talk to. And with influenced community opinion, we know who to avoid. It's simply stupid to embark on a campaign like that without involving the communities you wish to visit. We are the single rainbow support group in town, yet not one member of our executive or organisation as a whole knew about this visit until afterwards. Imagine what could have been achieved if locals had been aware. Yes. Show up, front up, engage, be connected, take photos, take selfies, and have fun. That's what I find really works. I started a Grindr outreach program when I realised that there were lots of gay men, although actually it was more so a lot of torsos. And there were hardly any gay men coming to events like forums. You do a forum on HIV and people are like, there's no men here in this town. And so I created this profile on Grindr as a passive profile to invite people to ask me questions. And my profile says, here for ACON Regional Outreach, ask me anything essentially. And I always lead in with a question, how often do you get tested? Not always online, but I do check when I'm in, when I'm traveling. I always sign my name. And then this was one of the first questions that I got, and I continue to get this question. Can I get AIDS from giving head? A lot. I get that question a lot. But within the first 20 minutes of creating this profile, I got about 15 questions immediately. From this to how do I get tested? Where do I get tested? Is there a back entrance to the sexual health clinic? Is there another way that I can go? Tell me about PrEP. What is it about PrEP? What's about PrEP? PrEP, 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 PrEP. And a lot of questions about risk. Lots and lots of questions. Met up with this guy. Hello, have you got a question?
Oh, no.
Okay.
I'm just curious. I know ACON's doing an evaluation about sex first. You know, if they're
Yeah.
going to include their
Yeah.
female girls.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah. We submitted a paper on our outreach work using Grindr to Asham, and it was accepted. So John will be talking about the themes that we've been able to identify through that work, and I think we had 80 interactions over the course of a few months, and some of the themes are, the themes emerge really, really quickly and easily, and they're just exactly what I just said. Where do I get tested? What is the test? What happens? Is my privacy going to be maintained? What is PrEP? And and about risk, in particular about head jobs. And they always like my response, and I say, "Suck the dick, honey." To try and develop how much time? How long have I been talking for? Oh my god! I told you. All right. Well, let's hurry up. Um, we've started doing a little bit more work around LGBTI inclusive practice training. I initially started using it as a way to introduce myself to services in the country, to approach interagencies to promote it, put it on for $50 a head for 4 hours, put on Arvo tea or some sort of bite to eat, provide a bit of a resource pack and see who came. And there were always 40 people or so who would come. And it was a great avenue into connecting who's interested. It's the women who are doing great community work who have a gay kid, and there's lots and lots and lots of those stories. Where have a other gay relative, always taking selfies of me in groups of people. I've talked about Border Pride Fair Day, which was a great community event last year in Albury. I went out to we've been out to the Broken Hill Festival for the last 3 years since it started, and offering rapid HIV testing and STI screening. Uh, and there was rumor on the street when I first started going to Broken Hill was that I was bringing AIDS to town. That was the rumor. So I got on the radio, got on ABC radio, because country radio stations always want to talk to me. They're always really interested. I think they're just thirsty for news stories. So they're like, "Oh, so I hear you're bringing AIDS to town." And so we used this exercise as a way to see if we could make a tangible difference in normalizing testing, and to try and destigmatize this idea that getting tested is somehow an unusual or shameful thing to do. And the key was about partnering with local sexual health services, partnering with the Aboriginal Health Service, and trying to get as many people along as possible. These are some of the events that I've been able to participate in and support. Tyson, you're in this photo. Did anyone go to Broken Hill this year? Or ever? Cool. This event and festival was at the Palace Hotel. It was a weekend long festival of drag, and we provide rapid HIV testing and STI screening. And over the course of the festival, we operated really 2 nights, and we did over 40 tests. We've started developing some location guides that connect people in with the local services that are around. We haven't launched these yet, but we've got a national and statewide one, and then here for Albury-Wodonga, here for Wagga, here for Goulburn, here for Shoalhaven, etc. These will live on our Facebook, on a Facebook album as photos, but they can be printed and easily updated to try and keep people connected. This is one of the sort of local networks that I've participated in the development of. This is in very, very early days, but it's just really exciting to see communities come together and services to improve LGBTI inclusion in an area. One of the things that we like to do is try new things. I'm all about making mistakes. And we wanted to see about how many people were coming from the bush to Mardi Gras and for people to track their trips, and they did. And we got lots of images from people stopping at Gundagai and Dubbo and all over the place, sending us photos and then marching, which was cool. So this is what the future, I think, is beginning to look like for regional outreach, supporting, doing quite a lot of work with PHNs, supporting the establishment of health pathways, developing a statewide model of outreach, more developing our health promotion volunteers, refining the way that we engage online. I'm really interested to see how the dry blood spot testing will work in an outreach capacity, more interagency work and developing alliances, and more work in the outback and the Blue Mountains as well, which is an area that I've very recently been given responsibility for. Yeah, and I think there's some interesting opportunities around preventative health screening. Last year, there was a lesbian in Albury who died because her doctor said she didn't need she didn't need a pap smear. So there's ACON's about to step into this sort of space around cervical cancer screening and breast cancer screening for people, for any LGBTI person with that kind of body part, which I think will be really interesting to see how that plays out in regional areas. And so these are really just some of the photos. Whenever I go to an outback area or a country town and I've worked all day doing things, I always go for a little drive and take a photo on my phone to just capture the moment of the day that I've had. And I find that this helps me sort of connect with what I'm doing and where I'm at. A lot of the work that we do in the bush is on our own. My team for this vast area there's 3 of us, and this is Tyson's second day. So up until this week, it was 2 of us covering a vast area. So there can be challenges around how to be sustainable, how to not be workaholics, and how to not burn out. I'm struggling, but I really try to support my team to be better at it than I am. But it's an amazing thing to do. So thank you so much for listening. If you've got any questions, go for it.